Live from the heartland and the crossroads of America, it's Tony Katz Today.
Have these live images right now. We see Hunter Biden appearing at the Capitol, just walking through the door. It looks like he's surrounded with his Secret Service team there and other members of his entourage. But he is officially at the Capitol as these hearings get underway. We're looking at live images right now as he goes through, it appears, the metal detector or nearby the metal detectors. We presumably expect him to enter at least one of these committee rooms, because again, this is before the oversight committee, also action happening in the Judiciary Committee. We're just going to follow these cameras. And
what they followed was Hunter Biden and his legal team not walking through metal detectors, walking around them. They were never checked. They, I guess, are above security that happens for, Americans like you and me. Shows up at the Oversight Committee hearing. There's James Comer. There's Representative Nancy Mace of South Carolina. There's Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia. And sitting there is Hunter Biden. It is from there that the full clown show begins. What I'm about to share with you, I could not make up if my life depended on it. I am a man who can think of many a thing, but even I don't have this level of skill. Tony Katz Today. 833-GOT-TONY, 833-468-8669, 833-GOT-TONY. Hunter didn't show up when he was subpoenaed. He stood there in front of the Capitol and said, "You are insulting the light of my father's love." I'm sorry, the light of what? My father's love, this love for his son. Oh, dear Lord. You really are a petulant, silly little child, aren't you? And look at what Republicans have done to you.
For 6 years, MAGA Republicans, including members of the House committees who are in a closed-door session right now, have impugned my character, invaded my privacy, attacked my wife, my children, my family, and my friends. They have ridiculed my struggle with addiction, they have belittled my recovery, and they have tried to dehumanize me, all to embarrass and damage my father, who has devoted his entire public life to service.
For the record, you do not have a character that can be impugned. You have no character. You're a man with addiction issues and working your way through that. All the best to you. But none of that changes the fact that you traded on the family name, Hunter Biden. You took money from Ukraine and China. You have no skill set whatsoever. You have friends who bought your artwork so they can have access to the president, which is the story of your adult life. And your character, which, by the way, doesn't exist, should be impugned when you forget about your own daughter. Just so we all understand each other, guys, and where we are in this subject, that's where I am with Hunter Biden. All the leftist blah, 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 blah. About how dare you say this about Hunter? How dare you mock Hunter? There is plenty to mock Hunter for. Plenty of despicableness. Plenty of shadiness, of crappiness to address with Hunter. Hunter? I mean, this all happened in the last couple hours. This is nuts. This all happened, today's Wednesday. Hunter gets in to the meeting. He is there in the Oversight Committee hearing. He's not testifying. He's in the audience, the gallery. I don't know what they officially would call it. Congresswoman Nancy Mace, who has lost her mind, by the way. You want to talk about somebody who I think is definitely a bit unhinged, but probably a really good party. Nancy Mace She is not pulling a punch.
First of all, my first question is, who bribed Hunter Biden to be here today? That's my first question. Second question, you are the epitome of white privilege, coming into the Oversight Committee, spitting in our face, ignoring a congressional subpoena to be deposed. What are you afraid of? You have no balls to come up here and...
Mr. Chairman, point of inquiry.
Oh, I know. Point of inquiry. You have no... I honestly don't know if I'm allowed to say it. Now, Kylan is running the board today. Hey, Kylan, good to have you here. You didn't have to bleep that. It didn't have to be dumped out. That was absolutely acceptable. It's coming from a member of Congress. It's a news story. That said, I don't know if I'm allowed to repeat what it is that she said. I'm not so sure. Then all of a sudden, everybody's got a point of inquiry.
Mr. Chairman...
If the gentlelady wants to hear from Hunter Biden, we can hear from him right now, Mr. Chairman. Let's take a vote and hear from Hunter Biden. What are you afraid of?
Hold on. Order.
Are women allowed to speak in here or no? Are women allowed to speak in here or no? Could you keep interrupting me?
I'll interrupt the chairman. I don't know that he's a lady.
Welcome to the United States of America, the U.S. Congress in 2024. No? Oh, play the music? Okay, I'm sorry. You're right. It's insane. It's beyond a clown show. It's nuts. So Mace has got a series of things that she's saying. People have got their points of order. Andy Biggs from Arizona is like, I'm not going to be interrupted when I speak. It's not going to happen. Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia then starts to speak. And what does Hunter Biden and his team do? They walk out.
For 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me, Hunter. Apparently you're afraid of my words.
Whoa! Oh.
I'd like to reclaim my time, Mr. Chairman.
Kind of burst their bubble. Wow, that's too bad.
Hunter walks out. We have now reached the peak. My gosh, what is happening here? For a guy who is so worried that his father is under attack for no reason, man, you're making it pretty easy to go after your dad. Because the question's going to be, what the hell's up with your son? This puts Hunter Biden now in the hallway. And in the hallway, people are trying to ask him questions everywhere. Why did you put your dad on the phone? If he wasn't involved in your business, why was he on your phone? Why was he talking to your people? And then, of course, the question of questions.
Please, I'll answer your question if you be quiet and let me make a statement, okay? What kind of crack do you normally smoke, Mr. Biden? Let me...
Oh, I don't know if you heard that or not. Right here.
A statement, okay? What kind of crack do you normally smoke, Mr. Biden?
Question, Mr. Biden. What kind of crack do you normally smoke? Oh my gosh. That all happened in like an hour. Oh, what's happening? We used to be a proud nation. Listen to me carefully. This whole thing is surreal. Is crazy. Understand what the Oversight Committee was doing today. They were discussing Hunter Biden. They were discussing Hunter Biden and whether or not to hold him in contempt. They want to get this through the committee and bring it to a full vote. I cannot describe to you how much I love this. Because if you bring it to a full vote of the House, you now get to put Democrats on the record saying that no one has to listen to a congressional subpoena. They are going to subpoenaed Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden did not show. They now want to hold him in contempt. So if you vote against the contempt, you're saying that a congressional subpoena has no power. I dare the Democrats to say that. I dare them. I want them to go on the record and state that that a congressional subpoena means nothing. Because when they do, because they won't be able to bring themselves to say, yes, you have to listen to a congressional subpoena, well, then it's over. You never have to listen to one again, except when you get subpoenaed, they'll say, well, what happened to Hunter Biden was just Republican intransigence, and they're not serious people, but this is serious, and now you have to listen. And then they'll send the Capitol Police and the Sergeant at Arms to your house, probably at 4:30 in the morning, Paul Manafort style, bust down your door, keep your children at gunpoint, and handcuff you in your underwear while they walk you outside. Who doubts me? No one? No. Orange whip, 3 orange whips. Correct. There's nothing to doubt. But to be on the record saying you don't think a congressional subpoena means anything, I think is gold. I think that's fantastic. So this is what took place. It is something else. As for why Hunter Biden showed up today, honestly, I have no idea. I have no idea what the win is. Mocking people, as Nancy Mace described, I don't think she did it well. She cannot let her emotions get the best of her. And she does that often, it seems to me. But I don't know why Hunter showed. I don't know what he gained from all this. That said, I don't actually care. Would someone please keep moving along down the road on this impeachment inquiry? And if we're going to impeach, let's get on with it then. Keep it here. I'm Tony Katz.
Ain't a thing that I would change about you.
We're going to talk about outrageous things that have happened or things that have never happened. Let's talk about the fact that President Trump incited an erection. And maybe that too.
Yeah, you could talk about that too, I guess.
Congress really is falling apart. It really is. It's something. That was Representative Pramila Jayapal. Just making a funny. Tony Katz today. What are you doing, boo? 833 got Tony. 833-468-8669. John Kirby is speaking. He is not the White House press secretary, but he might as well should be. There's a whole story about friction between him, National Security Council spokesperson, and Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, because Kirby knows how to answer questions for the most part. For the most part, I will get into that coming up. And Karine Jean-Pierre reads from a binder. He is a much more professional face for the White House than Karine Jean-Pierre, who really is terrible at what she does. Watching Karine Jean-Pierre makes me confident that I would be a fantastic press secretary for at least a week. For a week, I would be gold. And by then, I would be fired. I would not last a full Scaramucci. And then I would immediately go write a book. Oh, what a book I would write. Hour by hour explanation, TikTok of what had been happening. Gold, kitten. Gold. I had mentioned before a statement from Ron DeSantis. And Ron DeSantis discussing how families would feel if their children were kicked out of schools and these illegal immigrants brought in. Well, that's exactly what has happened. Of course, when we talk about New York and you talk about how these illegal immigrants that have been sent to New York because they came to America, why shouldn't they be sent to New York? What, they should just stay in Texas? They should only stay in Texas. They can't go to New York. They can't go to Chicago. They can't go to other places. Well, these illegal immigrants and others who have been brought to New York has no place to put them. The governor of Massachusetts, by the way, someone double-check me. Kylan, double-check me, because I had seen the story earlier. Governor Healy. Governor Healy is asking Massachusetts residents to take people in. Do I have that right? She's asking residents to take people into their homes, right? By the way, the Third Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, no soldier shall in time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. I don't know if this applies to illegal immigrants. Neither here nor there, just something I thought I'd remind everybody of. A lot of these people were living in basically a tent city, in a field, like a soccer field there in New York. But some very cold weather was coming. And so they got moved to temporarily shelter in the gym and auditorium of Madison High School in Brooklyn. The students were then told, you will have an e-learning day. And parents are out of their heads. Parents are angry. Parents are disgusted. How dare you? How could you? Do you feel good about yourself doing this to our kids? Wait till you learn, parents of New York. Yes, they do. Let us ask the question that has to be asked. When will you liberal white women learn? You vote for terrible people and terrible policies because Trump's a meanie. And now your kids don't get an education. What part of correlation do you not understand? I mean, do we have to go back and watch The Matrix and talk about causality? You did X, you got Y. Now shut the Z up. You did this. You voted for this. Now, I am a big believer in the idea that while people voted for Biden, right? Some of these people definitely voted for Biden. Let's not deny that. They didn't vote for all this insanity. I want to show them grace so I can get what I need in the next election, which is this entire progressive insanity gone. But when you're out there yelling at some school security guard at James Madison High School, the person you need to be yelling at is yourself. You voted for this progressive. You're the people who voted in Kathy Hochul, the governor. Again, you could have had Lee Zeldin. You could be doing something about this right now. Kathy Hochul, in her State of the State address, was talking about how she's going to really crack down on shoplifting. Is that right? Is that right? You had to wait for an address to the state to crack down on a crime. You are some chief executive. How brave. How brave. You needed to make a big statement before you did the thing instead of, just doing the thing. When I am in a public bathroom, right, at a restaurant or cigar lounge, and I'm washing my hands and I see a paper towel on the floor, I take another paper towel, I pick it up, I throw it away. No one's in the bathroom but me. I do that. I don't need a crowd to tell me to do the right thing. If I have taught my children anything, I only hope that I was able and have been able to teach them that you do the thing that must be done regardless of who is watching. You don't take shortcuts. You do it the way it must be done. You do it cleanly and clearly and with focus and with a bit of passion. And then you move on to the next subject. Move on to the next thing. But you don't wait to do the right thing because somebody's watching you. You don't do it. Do the right thing. Voting for Joe Biden was clearly the wrong thing. And now you know it. So now the question is, what are you going to do about it? Yell at some security guard? That's madness. I don't know who the Republican nominee is going to be. But if it's Donald Trump, I'm voting for him. And if it's Nikki Haley, I'm voting for her. And if it's Ron DeSantis, I'm definitely voting for him. If the nominee was Chris Christie, I would vote for him. I have to deal with my reality. Reality is everything. And here's the reality. The border is a remarkable mess. It is affecting all of these sanctuary cities who danced and cheered. They danced and cheered. When they were made a sanctuary city. That's what they did in Philadelphia. And they bragged. And they bragged about being sanctuary cities and how good they were and how kind they were. And then all of a sudden, people showed up on their doorsteps and then they got angry and they can't believe this and this is wrong and this is racist because many of these mayors are black. And you see how racist it is from Governor Greg Abbott. You're yelling at the wrong people, liberal white women. Go yell at the mayor. Go get in the mayor's face. Go get in the governor's face. But you elected that mayor in New York. You elected that mayor in Chicago. You elected that governor in Illinois. You elected that governor in New York. When do you change? When do you change? The problem is nobody says this to them, including their husbands. Being married is not easy. And I am not one who believes in the, forgive the way I say this, but understand what I'm trying to say. I don't know if I'm a total believer in the biblical theory. I'm using the word theory, go with me, about men running their families. Right? And how that works. In my life, in this family that I have, there are times where I make decisions. Absolutely I do. And there are times where my wife makes decisions. There's undoubtedly true. There are things that my wife and I discuss, and we are gauging the level of importance of the subject to ourselves and to the other person. And there are times where it is equally important. And coming to decisions on those subjects are tough. And sometimes there is the quote-unquote compromise, which is never it really is never fun. And sometimes there is just a disagreement that leads to, well, it has to be one way or another. And it's not a flip a coin. It is an intensity, and it can last. And sometimes those moments are hard, and getting past those moments are hard. But in a marriage, that's part of it. I think that sometimes it's a conversation about a decision has to be made. I will tell you, I have had very few moments of complete intransigence with my own wife. I just haven't. It just hasn't. There's been difficulties. There's been plenty of things that we've discussed and debated and disagreed about. But total intransigence, I could count on one hand. And sometimes it takes putting it to the side and then coming back to it later. Sometimes it means having to come to a decision and leaving somebody unhappy. Well, the question would be, how do you come to that decision? Somebody has to make a decision. Is that the man's role? Sometimes I would argue yes. Sometimes I do think it really depends on the subject at hand. But I don't, while I may not perfectly live that way, I don't disagree with families that do. Doesn't bother me at all. But I will not have any quarter for any husband who won't look at their wife, or wife who won't look at their husband and say, what are you doing? There are plenty of couples who disagree politically, or they have basic alignments, but one person is more intense than the other person. You're still voting for Biden after all of this? And if you're in a major city like New York or Chicago, you're the spouse. What are you doing? What are you doing? This is destroying us, destroying our city, and it's going to hurt our kids. What are you doing? As a matter of fact, you have a responsibility to do that. What are you doing? Your kid is in New York or Chicago and is voting for Kathy Hochul and voting for Eric Adams in New York and voting for these and okay with these things. What are you doing? Yes. Yes, indeed, you have that conversation. Are you having that conversation every day? I doubt that. Are you bringing it up? What are you doing? You bet. You bet you are. I think you should. Joe Biden policies at the border have shown to fail. And now everybody's dealing with the failure. And American kids, legally in America kids, are being told to take a back seat in their education to people who were brought over the border illegally. What are you doing? I think that's the only question to ask. These sanctuary cities have gotten what they wanted. And if they don't want it anymore, the question is, what are you doing? And if you're still voting for these people and these policies, what the hell are you doing? I'm Tony Katz. Tony Katz Today. Find everything going on at TonyKatz.com. On Monday, the Justice Department filed a statement of interest because the Justice Department has filed the statement as part of a lawsuit brought in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Georgia against the state's Department of Corrections. This is about whether or not medical care has to be provided to people who have gender dysphoria, which people utilize the terminology trans now, and do they have to be provided surgeries? What the Assistant Attorney General, Kristen Clark, of the Civil Rights Division wrote in the statement, and I'm quoting, "People with gender dysphoria should be able to seek the full protections of the Americans with Disabilities Act, just like other people with disabilities. The U.S. Constitution requires that people incarcerated in jails and prisons receive necessary medical care, treatment, and services to address serious medical conditions." Now, we can discuss the constitutional part, but back to the first. Gender dysphoria, which is a diagnosed mental disorder in the DSM-5, the Diagnostics and Statistical Manual utilized by the American Psychiatric Association. That is a disability? It's being trans is a disability? Well, tell that to the people who claim that they're trans. I can't wait to hear their response. But a disability? Are we now saying that anything you say regarding people who claim this transgenderism is a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act? We don't think that's going to lead to a problem, because I'm pretty sure it's going to lead to a lot of problems. This is Tony Katz Today. So Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin has prostate cancer. And that's why he was in the hospital. And then there were complications, and that's why he went back to the hospital. Okay. And what next? Do you think that the Secretary of Defense having prostate cancer is an excuse for not informing the President of the United States of his whereabouts, or that he was having surgery, that he would be incapacitated? That you had the undersecretary taking charge, except she was on vacation and didn't know that the secretary was in a hospital. Why would anybody think that any of this is okay? None of this is okay. None of this comes close to being okay. So why is this being defended? And how is it possible that no one's getting fired? Tony Katz today. Good to be with you. Find everything at TonyKatz.com. John Kirby, right? I think he's now the part-time press secretary for the president. He's going to let you know that the undersecretary, Kathleen Hicks, was more than capable of handling things.
Had there been a need by the commander-in-chief to task the Defense Department or to seek greater clarity from the Defense Department about a specific issue, the Deputy Secretary, Kathleen Hicks, who had that authority delegated to her, who had a full communications suite with her when she was on leave and fully staffed, would have been more than capable of being the acting Secretary of Defense for that period of time.
She wasn't told. You're telling us after the fact, everything ipso facto. That's not enough. If the defense secretary had a medical issue, I only hope he's okay. I hope they got the cancer. I hope it is resolved. I hope that he gets to have a happy and joyous and long life. But none of it changes the fact that the president wasn't contacted. That Kathleen Hicks, the deputy secretary, had a full suite and complement of tools at her disposal, I would assume that that's SOP, standard operating procedure. Nothing about that shocks or surprises. But she didn't know he was in the hospital. And none of it changes the fact that the President of the United States did not know. This is the story. What kind of children are these that they think this can take place and somehow magically it's fine? Because it's clear from the White House that Lloyd Austin isn't going to be fired. And Lloyd Austin needs to be fired. If you're the President of the United States and you're accepting this, well, that's madness. Now, there are a couple of takes here. One comes from Congresswoman Elise Stefanik of New York.
And look at the scandal right now with the Secretary of Defense. I represent thousands of troops from Fort Drum, the 10th Mountain Division, who are deployed in the Middle East right now. It is unacceptable that you have a Secretary of Defense who is not transparent with the White House. So I'm looking forward to being active on that issue to deliver accountability and transparency. And I called for his resignation.
So you want him fired?
Absolutely. It has an impact on, first of all, adversaries are watching. If you look at the national security challenges around the world today, whether the Middle East on fire, whether you think about China continuing to be on the rise, continuing to watch for American weakness, this asserts American weakness, and it shows the White House has no idea what's going on. The fact that they did not know, the President of the United States did not know, it is unheard of. This is why I called for the Secretary to resign. This is why we're doing an investigation.
Now, I think it's an interesting point about the showing of weakness. I don't disagree with that. I would argue that I am more bothered that the guy in charge is okay with this. To me, that is beyond irrational. Now, we should note that it isn't just Republicans at this moment talking about this. This is Congressman Adam Smith. He is on the House Armed Services Committee talking to Caitlin Collins on CNN.
But on the process here and how this happened, do you believe that it's appropriate that President Biden just learned about this diagnosis and what happened on December 22nd today?
Absolutely not. I mean, this is very troubling. Let me say, I think Secretary Austin has done a great job as Secretary of Defense. When you look at the coalition that he has put together to defend Ukraine, at the response to the Israel crisis, we're in a very, very difficult set of circumstances for our national security. He's done a great job, but there's really no excuse that I can think of for not having informed the president, number one, that you had cancer, but certainly number two, that he was having this surgery and that he was hospitalized. And that's the one question that we have to have answered. What did Secretary Austin think? I mean, why did he think that it was okay not to tell the president? I mean, Secretary Austin's number two in command of the military. President's number one. It's really important that he keep him informed. He didn't in this case. And I can't imagine a plausible explanation that justifies that decision.
That you can get behind. That is rational and that is cogent. What possibly excuses the lack of information? The answer, of course, is nothing. And the reason I bring this up again is because what this gets to, and if you caught me on Newsmax earlier this week, I had this conversation. I had it in a joking way, but you learn from it how serious this is. You're the guy in charge. You're the CEO. You're the boss. And one of your people is gone for 3 days and no one tells you. Now, I stated that I think it's weird that he didn't have any communication with his Secretary of Defense for 3 days in this environment. Makes me wonder exactly how often he speaks to his Secretary of Defense. Then it makes me wonder how often he speaks to his cabinet. How often? And does he reach out to them, or do they reach out to him? Or does nobody reach out to Joe Biden because Joe Biden is an incompetent old man and wouldn't know if he had the conversation with you anyway? But Adam Smith, Congressman Smith here, is absolutely right. What was Secretary Austin thinking? Why did he think that it was okay not to tell the president? And why would the president, having been informed yesterday of the true nature of the secretary's medical condition, why would he accept it? Why would he accept being treated that way? That question has not been answered. Think of the level of disrespect, not only that Secretary Austin has for the president, but that the Pentagon has for the president, that they felt no need whatsoever to inform him. No one thought it mattered. I thought this came to a fantastic head-to-head when Peter Doocy, the only guy who seems to ask questions, I shouldn't say that. Jackie Heinrich, I think, does really excellent work. I think she's a bit unsung over at Fox. I think she does excellent work. But Peter Doocy crushes. He does. He gets more of the fanfare. He crushes when he's there at the White House. And Peter Doocy asked a question of John Kirby, who again is now the de facto press secretary because Karine Jean-Pierre is ignorant and embarrassing. She's terrible at her job. If it doesn't come from a binder, she doesn't know how to say it. Check out this back and forth between Kirby, who is he's with the National Security Council. He does strategic communications, and Peter Doocy from Fox.
Wait, thank you for all the detail on that. But more broadly, why should we believe anything that this administration tells us about anything ever again?
I think we all recognize, and I think the Pentagon has been very, very honest with themselves about the challenge to credibility by what has transpired here and by how hard it was for them to be fully transparent with the American people. I think.
First things first. No one was talking about them being transparent with the American people. He wasn't transparent. They weren't transparent with the president. And by the way, that took, between the question and the answer, 34 seconds to get to that moment. There was a lot of stumbling, fumbling, mumbling going on from John Kirby there because he knows there's no good answer. But remember, what he said there is inconsequential. Being transparent with the American people is not the story for at least this conversation. He didn't tell the president. Nobody did.
We all recognize that. And wait, now just give me a second now. I know you got another one coming here, but we all recognize that this didn't unfold the way it should have on so many levels, not just the notification process up the chain of command, but the transparency issue. We all recognize that. And I think we all want to make sure we learn from that. It's up to you and your colleagues, and it's up to the American people to determine, how much they're going to ascribe what happened here to our credibility on every single issue. But in every way, Secretary Austin has been an exceptional defense secretary, and he still has the full faith and confidence of the commander-in-chief.
Why? Why does he still have the full faith of the commander-in-chief? What has he done to earn that? No one communicates. You still have full faith. Don't you have questions? And what's this idea of we've learned from it? Who cares what you learned from? You had to learn this as the leader of the Pentagon? You didn't know this from all your military training, that you have to inform your superiors of your whereabouts? Guys, you understand that John Kirby here is completely full of crap, right?
He has led the department at an incredibly dangerous time for our national security interests and those of our allies and partners.
But if the administration is going to go to such great lengths to keep secrets about the defense secretary's health, how can anybody be certain that the administration would not go to the same lengths to keep secret problems with President Biden's health in the future?
Brilliant question. It's the question you would ask, but he asked it beautifully and said it directly.
Sure.
If you could logically argue, and you can't, but if you could logically argue that
He's 81 years old.
Wait a second. Just give me a second here, bub. I'll get there.
I'm sorry. Did you just call Peter Ducey bub?
President Biden's health in the future.
If you could logically argue, and you can't, but if you could logically argue that
He's 81 years old.
Wait a second. Just give me a second here, bub. I'll get there.
Oh, he did. He did call him bub.
Just give me a second here, bub. Just give me a second here, bub. I'll get there.
Sure, okay. Bub. It's a professional outfit right here.
If the administration made some sort of Machiavellian effort across the board to keep this from getting public, then I think your question has merit and certainly is a fair one. I don't think it's a fair one because that's not what happened here, Peter. What happened here is the Secretary of Defense, for whatever reason, I can't answer the question why, that information wasn't shared. It wasn't shared widely in the department, and it certainly wasn't shared with the interagency. It's not good. It's certainly not good, which is why, again, we want to learn from this. We want to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
If you have to learn from this, the military is a complete and total failure, and everybody in the upper echelons needs to be demoted to private and then discharged dishonorably. Letting people know your whereabouts seems to be something that you learn the first week. Not a military guy, but it seems to be that's something you learn pretty quickly. You have to learn from this? Fire everybody. Then everybody will learn. This is nonsense, childlike, ridiculous pablum coming from the White House. These are children. You are right to be disgusted by their ineptness. But not only are they proud of their ineptness, they celebrate it and they rally around it. They will rally around the fact that the defense secretary has no respect for the president of the United States. And it should bother you. It should bother you because even if you don't like the president, you don't like the policies, you still respect the office. You respect it, but the defense secretary doesn't, and those who work in the Pentagon don't. Man, this story has got layers on layers. And I'd fire Lloyd Austin on the spot. I'm Tony Katz. I wanted to dig in a bit more about this real estate issue, specifically this office space issue that's going on not only in Indiana, but across the country, and not just in places like Indianapolis or Fort Wayne. Muncie, Bloomington, Evansville, all dealing with the issue, which is the office space is empty. The office space is empty because people don't want to come back to work, and that's going to lead to a whole conversation about how that is dealt with by employers, exactly how rough and tumble will, these things get. Over the past year, it is clear that not every business can get people to come back. And this is going to become not only an issue for the downtown businesses that rely on the people coming to the offices, but it's going to be a story of whether these businesses start cutting bait or acquiescing to the people who want to work from home and have nobody watching what they're doing. Tony Katz, good to be with you. Mickey Shuey joins me right now, commercial real estate, tourism, and sports business reporter over at the IBJ. He's the author of the Real Estate Weekly newsletter at the Indianapolis Business Journal, IBJ.com. I had sent this story to you from the Wall Street Journal. Offices around America hit a new vacancy record, 19.6%. And I said, what do you think of this number? And your response was, sounds about right. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Tony. First, I want to kind of set the stage a little bit, because here in central Indiana, it's important for us to know the numbers for our area, of course. And according to JLL, a brokerage, they say that the central Indiana number is actually closer to 24% overall, with downtown being around 22.7% vacancy overall. Now, that's not super out of line with that 19.6 number, but as I said, it's not surprising given that there are still a lot of questions about the future viability of these traditional downtown office spaces. I mean, you've still got the tall office towers, but then you've also got other projects that are actually underway or finishing up of new office space in other parts of downtown. Like you've got Bottle Works, you've got the Stutz. You're eventually going to have 11 Park and Circle Center. So really the big question that pops into my mind as a reporter is, how do those areas, how do these kind of specialty districts affect the future of the downtown core office space?
Well, it could be an answer to that question is people will be attracted to the new thing and they'll move out of the old thing. So it's just a question of adjusting the chairs on the deck of the Titanic, and it's not actually solving the issue. And when you talk about 24%, well, if the average is 19.6, that's 1 in 5 offices open. Once you get near 25%, it's 1 in 4 offices open. So me personally, I thought that number was pretty staggering. Talking to Mickey Shuey, commercial real estate, tourism, and sports business reporter for the Indianapolis Business Journal, IBJ.com. What are the building owners telling you about their plan? I assume they have discussed, here's how we think we can get people back. What are they discussing?
I mean, a lot of the building owners right now are staying pretty mum, but those I have talked with have really said that they're trying to focus on kind of quality of place type improvements, things like lounges and more open office spaces and shared spaces for workers. You've also got that going on within the rent ranks as well. I mean, you've got companies that are trying to open up larger break areas and gathering spaces. And that's something that was really popularized right after COVID, but it continues to be a trend because companies are trying to get their workers back. I mean, I'm downtown at least 3 or 4 days a week, and I will say that from my experience, there's been there's still a ton of cars on the road and everything, but certainly in the offices, there's not nearly as many people as there were pre-pandemic. So I think they're trying to figure that out. But more importantly, a lot of these building owners, I think, are to some extent trying to just keep the doors open. I mean, we've had at least one major building downtown, Circle Tower on Monument Circle, go into receivership because the owner was allegedly not able to pay the bills. So I think that's going to be a question as we go through 2024, whether we're going to see more companies, more building owners encounter those sorts of issues with their buildings.
So let's discuss, you brought this up earlier. We're not just talking about the massive, quote-unquote, skyscrapers. We're talking about the 3-story office complex, which you can find in Indianapolis, you can find in Muncie, you can find in Bloomington, and all across Indiana. They're having problems as well. Are their problems greater because they don't, by nature, have the amenities of the larger office complexes?
Perhaps to an extent, yes, I would say so, especially for those kind of standalone buildings. Because when you get the Keystone at the Crossing, for example, and the Keystone Office Park there, all of those buildings have the amenities or shared amenities that they can work with. But the smaller single building campuses are certainly encountering issues as well. That's not really broken down in the data all that clearly, so understanding that takes a little bit more finessing. But certainly they're encountering issues the same as what downtown or even the suburban office parks are.
So I mentioned Muncie and Bloomington. These cities, Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, etc., what are the cities doing to try and get the businesses to bring people back? How is that progressing?
I mean, honestly, it seems to be staying about the same. I mean, we've continued to see efforts from Develop Indy and other economic development arms try and bring companies in, but there's not necessarily a tried and true formula to do that, especially at a time when the stock is the occupancy is going down because people want to work from home. This is something that we really not encountered before, so I think people are still trying to kind of crack that code a little bit, especially on the city side, and ensuring longevity for the downtown central business district.
Before I let you go, how long does this go on? Is this a financial disaster still in the waiting, still in the coming on for 2024? Or is there a belief that there will be some relief in this year?
You know, I hate to say it, Tony, but it's hard to answer that one because I think we are still in the early stages of this in terms of finding a solution. Because once you find the solution, it's only a matter of time before that starts rolling out and being popularized. So I think once these companies find a solution and are able to kind of crack that code, we'll start to see some relief. But until that happens, we're going to continue to see more vacancy increases. And I am curious on my own what we're going to see happen with those office towers long term, because converting them is not an inexpensive task by any means.
You mean like turning them into condos and things like that?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen that happen a couple times, particularly with the 220 building at 220 North Meridian from Keystone. They spent about $80 million, and it turned out to be a very well done property. But that's not an easy thing to do, given just the size of these buildings and the breakdowns of their interiors.
Mickey Shuey of the Indianapolis Business Journal, IBJ.com. I appreciate you taking the time. You know, the focus has been naturally and rationally on major city downtowns. It's not just major city downtowns. That's the point. Let's say that the major cities can engage some level of incentive, and it does bring people back to some acceptable level of filling the offices. It doesn't. That's not necessarily what's going to work in smaller cities. Now, it might have some level of drag-along effect, but the smaller cities have to figure out how they're going to deal with that. Now, maybe what the smaller city is saying is, We don't care if they work in the office or not. They're still utilizing the services of the city because it's a smaller city. They're still going out for lunch. They're still going out for dinner. They're still shopping over here. So we actually feel it less, even if they're not coming to the office. Well, how good will a city feel about all that open office space and the blight that comes with it? Because eventually some landlord can't afford to be the landlord anymore. And then that tenant has to move. So now you have some office spaces that fill up because that's how the movement went, right? The natural migration. And now you've got some empty buildings and the blight that comes with it. It's a different level of maybe dealing with the problem. But I think that in all these places, the problem is there, and there's no easy solution for it. But when I see cities that are able to successfully bring people back, I will want to study what it is they're doing. Was it a giveaway? Was there another talking point involved? Was there some other strategy? And then how you can emulate that, if indeed it's worth doing. We will follow the story. Find everything at TonyKatz.com. This is Tony Katz Today. So now the plan is to throw out Speaker Mike Johnson. Is that what I'm hearing, Republican Party? You unbelievable bunch of ridiculous dopes. You deserve every bit of derision you get. And the same people who deserve derision are those who said, we have to get rid of Speaker McCarthy. You never had to get rid of Speaker McCarthy. It was all ridiculous nonsense from the very beginning. Tony Katz Today. Good to be with you. Now, I understand that we may disagree about this, but I'm going to say it again. The people who screamed, we have to get rid of Kevin McCarthy, were wrong. They had absolutely no plan whatsoever. They wasted time. They hurt their own capital, and nothing got better. The release of the January 6th tapes? I mean, if that was worth all of this to you, okay. And I don't mind them being released. I think McCarthy should have released them as well. But you threw McCarthy out because he made a deal regarding government spending to avert a government shutdown. Well, here's Johnson making a deal. It's not a perfect deal. And now we're going to talk about this again? Well, it turns out we are. You have got Republicans who are discussing the idea of vacating the House Speaker. They are having an out loud conversation saying, nope, this doesn't work. Chip Roy, Republican out of Texas, a critic of the agreement, said he would consider filing a motion to vacate Johnson over the deal. Quote, I'm leaving it on the table. I'm not going to say I'm going to file it tomorrow night. I'm not saying I'm not going to file it tomorrow. I think the speaker needs to know that we're angry about it. The people who refer to Chip Roy as a rhino, I think, are ridiculous people. They're upset that Roy is backing Ron DeSantis and not Trump, so this is what they scream. I would say to Chip Roy that if we're discussing the idea of money on the border and not enough happening there, you won't get disagreement from me at all. What you will get from me is, you don't have a plan. And none of your plans are going to get passed. If you say to me, Tony, you have to stand up, I'm going to yell at you. I'm going to yell at you, and I'm going to call your sister names. It's going to get nasty. I don't have to be told that we need to stand up. I have to deal with the reality of a House of Representatives and a 2-seat majority for the Republicans. And if anybody thinks that things are better when Hakeem Jeffries gets power, you're out of your mind. You're as dumb as a stump and twice as ugly. Don't you get it? This is our reality. And what you want is the masturbatory fantasy of your dream world. I have dreams. Oh, they're good dreams. I have got good and beautiful and joyous dreams, and I'd like to take a moment to share them with you right now. In my dream, there's a hilltop, and on top of that hill is a table set for two. and on that table is a medium steak. It's a ribeye, therefore medium. If it was a New York strip, it'd be medium rare. And there it is, and next to that is a glass of bourbon, but it's magical bourbon, because whatever bourbon I think of, boom, that bourbon becomes. It changes as my taste buds change, and an array of cigars, everything I could ever be in the mood for. And there is my wife, who is an absolutely perfect woman. Oh, what a dream I have on that hilltop, eating a steak, drinking a bourbon, smoking a cigar. And in that dream of mine, I have a Republican Party that isn't filled with morons! Not filled with morons. You will not get everything. You get what you can, you live to fight another day, and you keep on fighting. The minute you get your thing, you're on to the next thing. You haven't learned anything from the Democrats, have you? And I would say this to Chip Roy, I ain't afraid. I don't think the guy's a rhino, I just think he's wrong. And if he wants to have this fight, I'll have the fight with him. What does it matter? What, he's going to out-tough me? Get the hell out of here with that kind of crazy. He's just wrong. He's wrong to even mention it. Think, you guys, you got to go about the winning. This is step one of a multi-step process. Once we get step one, we go for step two. Once we get step two, we go for step three. Once we get step three, we go for step 7, and then we revert back to step 4. Do you not understand how the left does this? We're still doing this. It is horrific. It is ridiculous. It is shameful. It's embarrassing. That's what it is. Getting rid of Kevin McCarthy changed nothing. Nothing. It was a mistake from the beginning. Now you have less of a majority and the same old problems because you can't accept the fact that you get what you can and then you come back and you fight again. So much to learn. Find everything at TonyKatz.com tomorrow, everyone. Take care.